Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything, and you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on, it's gonna be fun. Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything, and you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on, it's gonna be fun. Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything, and you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on, it's gonna be fun. Welcome, guys, to How the Frack We Got Here, a show that takes the news and events of the week and try to make sense out of it all. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan, and on this show, we simply are all about the facts. There are plenty of news stations out there that simply want to do anything short but inform you. Here at How the Frack We Got Here, that's all we believe in. We go up to the left, we go up to the right, we go up to the middle of independence. We go after all sides because there's more than one side of a story to everything, and you need to know it all in order to actually formulate your own opinion. And that's what we try to do here at How the Frack We Got Here. Thanks for listening, and hold on, it's gonna be fun.
All right, guys, today's date, April 24th, 2021, and this is How the Frack We Got Here. I'm your host, the most Will Buchanan. On How the Frack We Got Here, we do take the events of the week and do try to make sense out of it all. Before we do get started, we do try to make this a family-friendly podcast. Sometimes there is going to be certain video and audio that may be a little bit on the graphic and heavy side for younger viewers, so viewer discretion is advised. Aside from that, welcome, guys. The weekend recap that we usually do every Saturday, we just try to go over the news that actually happened post the Wednesday midday recap, and unfortunately, we do have some news regarding the Micaiah Bryant shooting and what the Ohio Attorney General has decided to do so far regarding that.
These are complicated investigations. Each piece of video tells a different piece of the story, and I'm not going to prejudge the story until it's done.
Ohio's Attorney General talking about 16-year-old Micaiah Bryant's death. Columbus police shot and killed the teen on Tuesday. The AG promising an independent and transparent investigation. Also today, new security camera video of Bryant's last moments alive. We want to warn you that video is disturbing. Before we go to NBC News Now correspondent Maura Barrett in Columbus.
Allison, the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigations is leading this case. The state's attorney general overseeing that agency. The investigation is active and ongoing, and so we don't expect any immediate updates. The attorney general saying that often in these situations it can take up to 400 hours of interviews with both witnesses and officers involved. But he's calling this case with the shooting of Micaiah Bryant, the 16-year-old girl, a terrible tragedy. And he's also promising a fair and transparent investigation. I want you to hear from the Attorney General about what exactly they're looking at.
What happened to produce this? What did the officers see and know when they took their action? What options were available, if any? Was it reasonable? Was it proper under the law? You gotta wait and look at all the facts. Half the facts lead to half-truths.
The Attorney General also saying he's not yet ready to make the call about whether the officer's decision to shoot Mikaiah was justified given the situation. She was holding a knife, as we've seen in that body cam video. But we also knew today are getting a different look, a different perspective from the neighbor's security video across the street from where the incident happened. This video might also be disturbing for our viewers, so I want to warn you as you're watching this. But this video and this perspective gives a real understanding of how quick everything really happened. You see Mikaiah and a couple other women come out of the home, and within 30 seconds, that's when everything happens. We obviously don't know what happened leading up to this altercation, but Mikaiah Bryant coming out with a knife, lunging towards one female, then another, and then you quickly see the officers as they're running out of their cars fire, the one officer Reardon firing those 4 shots. So this perspective going to be definitely integral in the investigation as we wait for more details there in conjunction with the audio from the 911 calls and interviews with the witnesses. We don't have any other information on the 2 other females that were involved in this apparent knife fight, is what the police are referring it as. We also have some new information about the officer who fired those shots. His name is Nicholas Reardon. He's 23 years old and only started at the Columbus Police Force back in 2019. He's actually the son of a former sergeant who used to train recruits here in Columbus. But this follows just a really contentious relationship with the Columbus police and the community. Mikaiah is actually the 34th person over the last 6 years to be shot and killed by law enforcement. She's just the 7th teenager. So the community really calling for extra steps towards police reform, and they'll be holding a rally for justice for Mikaiah tomorrow at the State House.
So basically, guys, what we have here is, again, this, unfortunately, Mikaiah Bryant's shooting was literally hours post Derek Chauvin's guilty conviction, of course, of the him of killing of George Floyd. So now we're looking at a situation to where, again, another officer has killed a black person, and again, a lot of people are going, well, I mean, did he really have to kill her? And that's the question. It's hard to sit there and say at this point, just because of a situation like this. She had a knife in her hand. She was about to attack. Someone else, even though she was the one that was calling for 911. At the same time, it's also the officer's actions on the scene. I mean, because at first, when they arrive and they notice that they are about to fight again, could other options have been taken? I mean, it's that I get what the Ohio General, I get what the AG is trying to do. He wants all the facts presented in front of him before he makes a judgment. I get that. That's part of his job. He's supposed to get everything in so that way he can make a logical ruling on it. Now, sometimes that ruling may not go in favor of the Bryant family, but it's gonna, like I said before, it's gonna be hard because, again, officers, they do have a point about police reform, because officers are only supposed to draw their weapons when they determine that a life is in danger, or the person holding the weapon or knife is a danger to themselves. So again, the officer just coming up, seeing the fight scuffle, seeing the knife, it does make you wonder, could he have pulled something else? And that's, like I said before, it's gonna be hard to answer that question, because if you ask most people who are trained, they'll say, look, if a knife is involved, that means a knife can kill you. And if a knife is in the hands of somebody else that's about to attack another individual, then at that point, it's either them or you. And of course, other people are saying, well, they're less non-lethal actions. Because yes, an officer does have a taser. He does have, they have, because anybody can be a law enforcement officer, but they have tasers, they have a pepper spray, they have a lot of non-lethal options that they can use. But at this point, the question becomes, did the officer rush to judgment and immediately go for his firearm? Because that's going to be what the question is about what that officer did. It's just that everybody's saying, oh, well, she had a knife, she was attacking. I said, even so, we still have to look at law enforcement. We have to look at the officer's idea and thought process as he rolled up on the scene and decided to pull a gun. I mean, were there warnings about, hey, calm down, hey, separate? You know, were they trying to separate? Were they trying to corral the girls? Because again, as the reporter pointed out, yes, everything did happen fast, but was any other steps taken before the officer decided that lethal force was involved? Now, of course, if you look at the video, it doesn't show that, you know, if you look at the security video, you look at the body cam footage that they did show, it could be an argument that the officer did not exercise all possible options before deciding going to lethal force. That's how it looks. But again, I get what the Attorney General is saying, that you just simply want to have all the facts before you make a decision. But one thing is definitely fairly obvious that needs to change: police reform. And a lot of people going, "Oh, you're going to talk about defund the police." Well, if you don't know what defund the police is, then you're just gonna hear that and go, "Oh, you just don't want more officers." No, it's not the fact that law enforcement cannot be a great profession. It's the fact that a lot of things need to change about how law enforcement is done. That's it. And I've never understood that when I sit there and tell people, law enforcement can be a great profession, but like everything else, it is subject to change and reform. And it's amazing how those on the force will either groan or accept it because it's true. The way policing is done in America, especially toward minorities, needs to change. And it's amazing how true a fact that is how many times that gets ignored. But we'll follow the Bryant case as it goes along. Like I said before, the AG is currently gathering all information. The officer shooting, of course, is already on administrative leave and sequestered somewhere for his safety. But as more details come out to see if whether or not the officer will be charged for his actions, we'll see. But speaking of Derek Chauvin, you guys already know this case because we actually got the story on this a little earlier this week.
Members of the jury, I will now read the verdicts as they will appear in the permanent records of the 4th Judicial District. State of Minnesota, County of Hennepin, District Court, 4th Judicial District. State of Minnesota Plaintiff versus Derek Michael Chauvin, Defendant. Verdict, Count 1. Court File Number 27, CR 20-12646. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to Count 1, unintentional second-degree murder while committing a felony, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:44 p.m. Signed, Juror Foreperson, Juror Number 19. Same caption, verdict Count 2. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to Count 2, third-degree murder, perpetrating an eminently dangerous act, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Signed by Jury Foreperson, Juror Number 19. Same caption, verdict Count 3. We, the jury, in the above entitled matter as to Count 3, second-degree manslaughter, culpable negligence, creating an unreasonable risk, find the defendant guilty. This verdict agreed to this 20th day of April 2021 at 1:45 p.m. Jury Foreperson 019. Members of the jury, I'm now going to ask you individually if these are your true and correct verdicts.
Now we're going to go ahead and stop it there because, as you guys know, and as every news cycle around the world has already shown this many times, yes, Derek Chauvin was found guilty of all charges in the murder of George Floyd. That also being said, as there is some news post that as the lawyers and the judge of the case are now taking aim at Maxine, Representative Maxine Waters' comments post the jury decision.
A motion for a mistrial over comments made by California Congresswoman Maxine Waters. The defense said Waters prejudiced the jury during a visit to Minnesota when she said protesters should get more active and more confrontational if Chauvin is not convicted. The judge criticized Waters for making the remarks and suggested they may be grounds for appeal.
I'm aware that Congresswoman Waters was talking specifically about this trial and about the unacceptability of anything less than a murder conviction. I wish elected officials would stop talking about this case, especially in a manner that is disrespectful to the rule of law and to the judicial branch and our function.
Waters pointed out that the judge said her words don't matter. House Republican leader Kevin McCarthy says he was introducing a resolution to censure Waters. When asked if Waters should apologize, House Speaker Nancy Pelosi said no.
Says a lot, doesn't it? Now, keep in mind, Maxine Waters came post. Maxine Waters' comments came post the jury. The jury go ahead and choosing to go not guilty on Derek Chauvin's comments. This was after that. So again, it's amazing that the judge, while he was still listening to appeals, would sit there and say, I wish, which is kind of funny that they say two words. That he says early in the case that, opinions outside the court don't matter, and at the same time, I wish politicians would not comment on this case. Well, as long as the jury is sequestered and they're not having access to local media, what's the problem? The jury pool isn't tainted. That's the one thing about jury cases. If you've ever had a jury case or had jury duty, that the simple fact of the matter is the jury is sequestered, and the reason being because they don't want outside influences to basically corrupt the pool. So the 12 jurors that were on the Derek Chauvin case were sequestered. They were sequestered and sheltered off. They weren't allowed to speak to anybody. They weren't allowed to view certain television or media or things of that nature. They were completely sequestered for their case for the time they were on the jury during the trial. So I don't get what the judge was saying that I wish politicians would stay out of it, even though Maxine Waters' comments came post the verdict. And I don't see how they're grounds. And again, how are they grounds for a retrial or an appeal when, simply put, the jury only deliberated for 10 and a half hours, which is the shortest time for any jury to debate over a trial, and they came back unanimously guilty on all charges. That is, as I used to say when I played video games, weak sauce. Because there's Chauvin is going to be sentenced probably in June at this point, and he's probably looking at 40 plus years, as he should, just for off the 2 murder charges alone. I don't see how that's an appeal, personally. But that's not Chauvin's only problem, because with this guilty conviction coming back to him, it looks like the Department of Justice is also considering other cases.
Investigation of Derek Chauvin, looking now into an alleged incident from 2017 involving a 14-year-old boy. TJ Holmes is here with this story. Good morning, TJ.
Cecilia, good morning to you. We know Chauvin knelt on top of George Floyd for 9 minutes and 29 seconds. He allegedly knelt on top of a teenage boy for 17 minutes. The jury didn't get to hear about that, nor about a lot of the other incidents and complaints in Chauvin's personnel file. But now, even after the guilty verdicts, Chauvin's past life and behavior are under scrutiny.
On the heels of that DOJ announcement of an investigation into the Minneapolis Police Department's practices as a whole, sources now tell us that the DOJ's ongoing criminal investigation of convicted murderer Derek Chauvin is also looking at a September 2017 incident involving a black teenager. The confrontation was captured by body cameras, and the video was presented to the judge in Chauvin's just concluded murder trial. That's according to the state prosecutor, Matthew Frack, who wanted to tell the jury about the case. Chauvin was dispatched to a home on a domestic dispute call between a mother and her son. After entering the home, officers told the son to lie on the ground, which he refused. Chauvin allegedly then hit the 14-year-old boy in the head so hard he needed stitches, grabbing the teen by the throat, causing him to lose consciousness and fall to the ground. Frank wrote, noting the teen's ear began bleeding, and about a minute after going to the ground, the child began repeatedly telling the officer that he could not breathe. He allegedly held the boy down with his knee for nearly 17 minutes. The U.S. Justice Department is still weighing whether to bring federal charges against Chauvin. We also have more information this morning about Chauvin's life on the force and off. Despite several commendations and awards during his 19-year career, Chauvin was named in at least 17 complaints, including one alleging excessive force during a traffic stop. But the jury, who found Chauvin guilty on all 3 counts, was not privy to the entirety of that information. An alternate juror in the case, Lisa Christensen, is speaking out about the toll the trial took on her.
I didn't think it would affect me as much as it has. It was emotional. It was draining.
Christensen believes Chauvin is guilty and says the pulmonologist, Dr. Tobin, was a key witness for the state.
I feel like he could actually point out going through the video and saying, hey, at this instance right here is when Mr. Floyd lost his life.
We mentioned those 17 complaints against him in his file. Only one resulted in any type of action, any discipline, and those were simply letters of reprimand. We do want to mention also there's a brand new ABC News Washington Post poll finds that 60% of Americans say the country should do more to hold police accountable for mistreatment of blacks in this country. 63% say black people and other minorities do not receive equal treatment. And a reminder, Cecilia, sentencing for Chauvin is expected in June.
Okay, TJ, thanks. We're going to.
So let's think about that for a second, y'all. The simple fact of the matter is that there were now that they've gotten the guilty conviction for Chauvin on the murder of George Floyd, now the rest of his life is under scrutiny. And also the Minneapolis Police Department is actually under scrutiny by the DOJ. Please, oh please, again, for all those that say we don't need police reform out there, try to defend this one. Keep in mind, that's just one of other stories out there. The same stories that, because, they may have not gotten the same shine, if you will, as the George Floyd case did. You could say because of lack of social media. You could say that there's not a videotape that's being circulated out there, because that seems to be the only way that we can actually get public outcry and support. Because if it wasn't, because the simple fact of the matter is, how do you think the George Floyd case got so big? It got so big because the world saw a black man being murdered on video right in front of our eyes. So again, with Derek Chauvin, and who obviously has a case of a history of premeditated violence and over excessive force, again, this comes all stemming from the police department that he served, which is now currently being investigated. But please, oh please, tell me how police reform is not needed. I keep saying that the entire time that defund the police isn't a bad idea, is not a bad idea. Police reform is certainly needed, and that we need to stop defending police, especially police who do a bad job, because there were so many things on social media. Some officers were sitting there saying, well, after the George Floyd case, I'm thinking I might need to quit the force. Quit! If you're law enforcement and the Derek Chauvin guilty verdict bothers you that much as a cop, please quit, retire, just don't be a cop. I would rather you not be a cop if a cop being convicted of killing a black man bothers you that much as a cop. Please quit. Because that only tells me that, if you're that messed up over a cop not doing his job correctly, then I don't want you anywhere near protecting and serving citizens, personally. That's just me. But another case that's coming out about the case of Andrew Brown, who was actually was shot by deputies, as those deputies are on administrative leave right now. But the case itself is, well, again, all too common.
Carolina, calling for transparency and the release of police body cam video in the shooting death of Andrew Brown. 7 sheriff's deputies have been placed on leave after Brown was killed on Wednesday, while authorities were attempting to serve an arrest warrant. ABC's Mona Kosar Abdi is on this story for us. Mona, good morning.
Whit, good morning. Pressure is mounting this morning on local authorities after officials released few details about what led to the shooting death of Andrew Brown Jr. That shooting taking place as the conversation around policing in America is at the forefront. Overnight, demonstrators taking to the streets in protest, and after days of outrage, Elizabeth City, North Carolina is officially requesting that local law enforcement release body camera footage in the police shooting of Andrew Brown Jr.
Shots fired, need EMS. You're responding on TAC 3 with EMS.
The emergency city council meeting coming after 7 officers involved in the shooting are placed on administrative leave.
If any of my deputies broke any laws or violated any policies that come out through this investigation, they will be held accountable.
Throughout the week, protesters have been demanding answers in the deadly incident, which took place at Brown's rental home. Authorities claiming they were trying to carry out an arrest warrant for felony drug charges.
Mr. Brown was a convicted felon with a history of resisting arrest. Our training and our policies indicate under such circumstances there is a high risk of danger.
But at the time of the attempted arrest, it seems the 42-year-old tried to flee and police opened fire.
Special advised EMS has got one male, 42 years of age, gunshot to the back.
Brown's neighbor, who says she saw the shooting, says he didn't pose a threat.
He was nonviolent. Anybody that knew him would tell you that.
Now, Tension is rising, with many demonstrators asking why police opened fire when a suspect was fleeing.
He was driving away. Why did y'all let off on him like that?
And we are also learning that 3 sheriff's deputies have resigned, but the sheriff's office tells ABC News that those resignations are not related to the shooting. Eva?
Yeah, that's interesting. You know, black man gets killed driving away and 3 deputies just immediately resign. That has nothing to do with it at all. Right. So again, with the case of Andrew Brown, this is fairly new as this happened just this Wednesday. But again, the situation comes up. You know, why was lethal force necessary? Of course, I love the fact of how the law enforcement officers got together. Well, he had a history of this. He had a history of resisting arrest. He was a former felon. Okay, so again, what is this? I mean, the only thing I can think of at this point is that you are basically painting the narrative that this gentleman caused his own demise. Where have we heard this one before? You know, it's amazing to me that, of course, these 7 deputies that are on leave and 3 that resigned are now, you know, under the scrutiny that, okay, why did you shoot? And of course, the body cam footage, which again, I've made this kind of a point about this. It's just that when Micaiah Bryant was killed, that the body cam footage was released immediately. In this case of Andrew Brown, who was killed on Wednesday, the body cam footage has not been released. And I'm just sitting there saying, I find it interesting that if the cops have nothing to hide, or they believe that the body cam footage justifies them, that they immediately release the video and go, see, accountability. But yet, when it's like, oh crap, did we make a mistake and actually go for lethal force when we didn't need to? We might need to review this first before the public does. That's not accountability. To me, it's again, it's one of those situations to where you have to be clear, you have to be fully transparent. You have to be if you made a mistake, you made a mistake. But it's amazing where the sheriff was like, oh well, if any of my deputies, if they violated the law, then they will be held accountable. That's not good enough. It's not. Because again, we don't know the nature. We don't know the nature of how your officers decided to kill Mr. Brown, except the fact that we know he was shot in the back. Now, if he was shot in the back, that means his back was turned to you, or that means that he was fleeing from you. But either way, you're gonna have to. I mean, to justify lethal force, which I guarantee they're trying to do right now, is gonna be slightly difficult. Because again, another black man was killed because officers decided that lethal force was necessary. Which again goes back to my point about this whole entire thing about police reform and accountability. But we will follow the Andrew Brown story as it comes along. Keep in mind, guys, the Ahmaud Arbery case is coming up too, because as they're beginning to do a jury pool to go ahead and get that case started. So it's just it is a lot for the black community. Let's just be honest. We are it's I should say it's not nothing we're not used to. And even that, saying that still is messed up, because we are emotionally exhausted, especially when it comes to the fact of black men and black women being killed. We are emotionally exhausted. And if you've ever been emotionally exhausted, whatever you feel, the body does right behind it. So I definitely understand that. When someone, I can't remember what podcast it was, but someone on a podcast that were covering the police shootings said that, right now we're emotionally exhausted, but we're going to still keep going. And I completely believe that. But moving right along to switch gears for a second, Matt Gaetz, his case is just not looking too good, especially with the simple fact of the matter that he is still being probed and investigated, because he might have had quite the life behind the scenes.
About the federal investigation into embattled Florida Republican Congressman Matt Gaetz. Sources are telling CNN that prosecutors are investigating whether the Florida Republican took gifts, including travel and paid escorts, in exchange for political favors. This is all part of an ongoing probe, also examining whether Gaetz engaged in a relationship with a girl that began when she was 17 years old. CNN's Paula Reed joins us now. Paula, what are federal investigators looking at?
Good afternoon, Jake. Sources briefed on the matter say the Justice Department is scrutinizing a 2018 trip to the Bahamas involving Congressman Gates and several young women. They're specifically looking at whether that getaway was part of an orchestrated effort to illegally influence the congressman on the issue of medical marijuana. Now, CNN has previously reported Gates is under investigation for engaging allegedly in a relationship with a woman who was just 17 when that relationship began. We've also reported that Gates attended sex parties in Orlando with other prominent Republicans, that those parties involved women, drugs, and sex in exchange for money. Now, CNN has also learned that investigators already have one key witness who is cooperating, and that is Joel Greenberg. He's the former Seminole County tax commissioner, and he's a close associate of Gates. He also attended those sex parties. Now, he was indicted last year on multiple federal charges, including sex trafficking, and he's expected to plead guilty in the coming weeks.
So you report that a number of Gates's close associates have ties to the medical marijuana industry. Like who? Who are you talking about?
So the congressman has a long history of advocating for medical marijuana. He's introduced several pieces of legislation at the state and federal levels seeking to loosen laws regulating the drug. Now, according to reports, one of these people, Dr. Jason Pirozzolo, a Florida doctor who founded a medical marijuana advocacy group, accompanied Gates on that 2018 trip to the Bahamas. Now, Gates has referred to the doctor as one of his best friends, and the pair have repeatedly intersected over medical marijuana. As far back as 2014, Gates, then a state representative in Florida, introduced the medical marijuana legislation just 2 weeks after vacationing with Pirozzolo in the Florida Keys. Just 1 week after the legislation passed, Pirozzolo launched a medical marijuana consulting company. Then in 2018, when Gates introduced the Medical Cannabis Research Act, a source tells CNN the congressman hand-delivered a fully written draft of the bill to his staff, and it overlapped significantly with the agenda the doctors group had been pushing. Neither Gates nor Pirozzolo have been accused by the Justice Department of any wrongdoing or charged with a crime. Pirozzolo's lawyer declined to comment, and a spokesman for Gates also declined to comment on the substance of our reporting, but the congressman has previously denied ever paying for sex.
Sex, drugs, and politicians. Sounds like I'm about to tell a bad joke, doesn't it? Well, I'm not surprised about Gates, because if I was Gates' publicist right now, I'm pretty sure he's working on his third pack of cigarettes. He's like, bruh, really? Bruh. I said, I could do sex parties. I can explain that away. I can even explain away, paying for sex and high escorts. Congress does it all the time. But drugs? Really? I can imagine his publicist is done. I can imagine his publicist like, bro, I'm out. I cannot. No. But again, it's kind of funny. Matt Gaetz was one of Doritos' biggest supporters, and he just, waved his disrespect across the board. Keep in mind, he made fun of wearing masks. He didn't wear a mask when he was in Congress. Made fun of women and minorities, and just had a good old time when he was on the Trump train. And now, as the old timers used to say, the chickens are now coming home to roost. And who knew that apparently being, like I said, it's a story that writes itself. That I don't think Matt Gaetz is gonna be around for too long in the political world. And it's hard to say I won't lose sleep over that. I'll sleep like a baby. But another thing that's messed up, and I think it's kind of cold and calculated, keep in mind, guys, the State of the Address is not too far off from now, where President Joe Biden will address Congress, in the Senate. And the Republicans have already decided on who will be giving the GOP response to Biden when he addresses Congress. This guy.
I've been stopped 7 times by law enforcement officers, but the vast majority of the time, I was pulled over for...
Yeah, I'm just not. Anyway, that individual is Representative Tim Scott of South Carolina, who will deliver the GOP response to President Joe Biden's address when he addresses Congress next Wednesday. Now, keep in mind, for all those that don't know who Tim Scott is, he is the lone black person in the Senate that's for Republicans. Let me say it again. He is the only black Republican senator for Congress. I know, black and Republican. Apparently they exist. I mean, I still say to this day, you know, every black person that votes Republican, I ask that question all the time. How are you voting against your own interests? Same thing I say to women who vote Republican. Again, you're voting against your own interests, but that's neither here nor there. But I say this because the GOP is taking a very calculated approach. Because keep in mind about GOP and I was like, what do you mean by GOP? Republicans. They call them the same thing. It's a very calculated measure because, let's be honest, Republicans right now have a hard time connecting to minorities. They do. Even though they hate minorities, half the bills are against minorities, but they do need minorities to vote for them, especially in the midterms that are coming up next year. So how else do you sit there and, you know, try to curb the black vote, if you will, by getting one of our own to speak to us? Yeah, no. Tim Scott was actually a part of the Tea Party that actually came in during the second term of President Obama's presidency, in which they, you know, the Tea Party came in saying no new taxes, we're not going to do government overreach, and, you know, a whole list of just crazy demands. Tim Scott was one of those Tea Party representatives and was able to get in South Carolina under the GOP ticket. I am sorry, this feels more like a plant. It's like saying, how do we get black people to listen and talk to us? Oh, I know, let's get one of their own. It doesn't work that way. And I'm sorry, Tim Scott to me is a poor representation of black politics because he's pretty much just following the playbook which got him the position in the first place, curtailing Caucasians. So, again, I'll be looking forward to President Biden's joint session speech with Congress next Wednesday. And yes, we will cover what Tim Scott's response was in that same breath. I'm not expecting a lot. But speaking of Biden, he is moving forward with his infrastructure bill, and he decided to let us know what's all in it. Eventually.
Signing of his major COVID economic relief plan. Turning to politics here, President Biden is now unveiling more details on his next big agenda item. That's infrastructure. And he's looking to pay for it with a major tax hike on wealthier Americans. It comes as Republicans put forward their own counteroffer on infrastructure to that $2 trillion infrastructure plan that the president has. The GOP plan would cost an estimated $568 billion, and it focuses on traditional infrastructure like roads and bridges and airports and public transit. Wouldn't cover funding for electric vehicles or housing and some of the other priorities in President Biden's plan. So for more on this is the big debate right now here. Let's bring in our esteemed ABC News political director, Rick Klein. So, Rick, we've got this $2.2 trillion Biden plan and now the Republican $568 billion plan. That's a lot of daylight between the two of them. But that maybe means there's room for compromise somewhere in the middle. Well, what's the deal? What is the negotiations like ahead, and what do you think the chances are for something happening?
Yeah, this was just the first offer from Republicans. No one thinks that'll be the final document. The White House says it's a good faith effort. Of course, coming in at about a quarter of the price and losing a lot of what the Republicans would consider to be extraneous, but what the Biden administration says is actually vital for the modern workforce. That's a big difference, a big chasm between the two sides. Maybe bigger, though, are the pay-fors. The Republican plan rules out any kind of changes to the tax code, including any rolling back of the Trump tax cuts around corporations, around individuals. That's an enormous difference because that's key to one of the campaign promises that Joe Biden made. And of course, just if you want to do this kind of spending without adding to the deficit with hundreds of billions of additional spending, then you have to find some way to pay for it. And taxes are the way to go. So we've got this proposal out there. We have a bipartisan group in the Problem Solvers Caucus that has put forward at least a framework. And these are the stirrings, these are the rumblings that Biden needs because, frankly, he doesn't have the votes right now without some kind of bipartisan compromise.
And it makes those moderates, right, led by Senator Joe Manchin of West Virginia, Democrat, but sometimes right in the middle there, so crucial. So where are they and how influential do you think whatever moderates are on the Republican side, maybe Rob Portman of Ohio and the other Democrats, how influential are they and what do you think their role will be?
they're the key to all of this. And Joe Manchin has said directly he is not going for a $2.3 trillion package. He says that's out the window. He doesn't like all the tax increases, and he doesn't like all the spending on progressive priorities that are, in his view and in the view of many Republicans, extraneous to the centrality of infrastructure. If it's about infrastructure, if it's about, like you said, roads and bridges and mass transit and the like, there is room there for bipartisan compromise. And not to minimize the price tag, north of $500 billion for Republicans to propose. They're saying that there's never been a Republican proposal of that magnitude in the past. And the fact is that Joe Manchin is a lot closer to this Republican group than he is to the White House group. And the Republicans know that, and they're taking advantage of that in this round of negotiations. Again, Biden needs them to come to the table. He needs the negotiating window to be open. And that is an encouraging sign on one sense, even though there's the two sides are very far apart. But you could see Manchin working with some of his Republican colleagues, bridging that difference.
It's nice to be Joe Manchin.
I've been saying it. About Joe Manchin. I have been saying this on previous podcasts. Moderate Democrats might as well be Republicans. They might as well. Because moderate Democrats have Republican values. Joe Manchin is pretty much a Republican in Democratic clothing. Keep in mind, he was also the guy that could have held up the American Care Relief Plan, which in itself was $1.9 trillion. That eventually did get passed through budget reconciliation. He was going to hold that up. Now, keep in mind the infrastructure bill, which Joe Biden is putting forth, does have a price tag of $2.3 trillion. Yes, because our bridges, our roads, our dams, our areas of structure are in woeful need of repair. Not only that, but our homes, our cities, everywhere else, our infrastructure is crumbling and needs repair and upgrades. It is amazing, again, that I sat there and said the previous part of this mini podcast ago, Joe Manchin is going to be a problem. He is going to be a problem. Why? Because he's going to sit there and be, oh, well, I just think for the simple fact of the matter that $2.3 trillion, oh, that's a lot. Really? And at the same time, the Republicans love this because they know, slim majority, if one Democrat decides against it, the whole thing is put to shame. And I've said this about Joe Manchin. It is amazing to me how Republican he acts when he should be a Democrat. If he wants to be a Republican, switch sides. Not that hard. People do it all the time. But again, the whole idea that Biden wants to raise taxes on the rich in order to pay for this plan, it's kind of hypocritical, just because, again, the same thing about raising taxes on the wealthy and well-off was meant to pay for college, was meant to pay off student loans, was meant to offset the rise of raising the minimum wage, which again is still sitting at $7.29. It should be sitting at least $15, or if you really want to go by levels of inflation, should be sitting somewhere between $23 and $24 an hour. Again, it is amazing that at those times when raising tax on the rich would have paid for it all, or making sure corporations did pay taxes and not actually skirt away with zero tax bills, would make sure that we're getting all the funding we need to pay for this infrastructure bill. But let's not make no mistake. Republicans are used to sitting there saying, well, why does it cost so much? Because you ignored the problem. You in previous classes ignored the problems of our bridges, roads, dams, and everything else that is man-made. You guys ignored it. You kicked it down the road. Now, eventually, you can't kick it down the road until, let's just say, knock on wood, and I hope it doesn't happen, but if a bridge suddenly collapses or, fails as cars are going across it or things of that nature, then you're going to be like, oh, this is horrible. How did it happen? Because you ignored the problem. So again, Republicans, I'm not surprised that they scoff at a $2.3 trillion tax bill when it's not for their rich and corporation buddies. But I don't expect much out of Manchin, and I will keep mentioning him just because I said it before and I'll say it again. He is the potential roadblock to really getting a lot of progressive reform done in Congress. But moving right along, guys, we just got a few more stories before we get to our Feel Good News segment. I wanted to talk about the fact that the CDC and the FDA did lift the pause off of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine for the coronavirus.
Good evening, and it's great to have you with us here as we near the end of another week together. And we begin tonight with the breaking news on the Johnson & Johnson one-shot vaccine here in the U.S. Late today, a CDC panel recommending lifting the pause and restarting vaccinations here in the U.S. with that vaccine. It will now come with a warning about the risk of very rare blood clots. The CDC now revealing there are now 15 known reports of blood clots, possibly linked to the vaccine. That's out of nearly 8 million shots given. 12 of those cases, the clot was near the brain. All of the patients, women between the ages of 18 and 59. 3 of the women did not survive. The panel still determining, though, the benefits outweigh the risks given the millions of shots given out and the rare number of cases, saying Johnson & Johnson's vaccine could still prevent thousands of deaths from the virus as we move forward. And people getting the shot will be told to be aware of symptoms, including severe headache or leg pain, and we'll go down the list. Authorities hoping this will help with some of the vaccine hesitancy, helping to quickly vaccinate people in remote areas of the U.S. Obviously easier because it's just one shot. Only 10 of FEMA's mobile clinics remain operational because of that pause. Tonight, the CDC now reporting more than 135 million adults have received at least one dose of the vaccine, more than 52% now of all adults in the U.S. ABC senior national correspondent Steve O.
Okay, of course that's going into another story, but yes, CDC and the FDA have decided to lift the pause on Johnson & Johnson vaccine after 15 cases of women who had blood clots, developed blood clots from the shot. Now, again, I keep saying this because people are like, well, see what happens when you want to take the vaccine? I want to say this because you'll hear this a lot. I'm not going to get the shot. I'm not going to get the vaccine. It's not safe. I'm like, oh, dear God. Okay, number one, and I do this all the time. Whenever I hear somebody do this, I immediately grab my head and I'm just like, you can't be this special. And then I usually ask, what's your alternative? Oh, well, what about herd immunity? Please don't use something that you heard that you don't understand. And I have to tell people, herd immunity doesn't happen because, again, if you want herd immunity to work, then that means a large part of the country needs to be immunized, but at the same time, you're willing to accept that there's going to be several thousand lives lost before everybody is saved. So that's herd immunity, folks. Now, I get that Johnson & Johnson's vaccine may cause blood clots, but again, the beauty part about the vaccines right now is that you can choose which vaccines you want to get. Now, does that mean that supply is unlimited? No, it's not unlimited, but again, you can choose which vaccines you want to get. But right now, every vaccine, Pfizer, Moderna, Johnson & Johnson, are all having successful rates of anywhere from 92 to 97%, which is very good considering. So again, I'm not knocking the fact of the matter. It's just that, yes, the vaccine might have certain side effects because everybody's physiological, we have physiological differences, anatomical differences. So we cannot account for everything that happens when people get the vaccine shots. This is why reporting, and I don't mean to yell, but this is why reporting is so vital after you get the shot. That's why they keep on saying, please monitor yourself. Please make sure you're hydrated. Please make sure that you're eating regularly. You know, if you experience anything abnormal, headaches, pain, nausea, go down the list. They want you guys to sit there and let them know so you can be monitored and treated. That's why, like in my case, I just got my second shot just yesterday. And of course, easy peasy, go in, get my second Pfizer shot, and they make you sit down for 20 minutes and say, hey, we will just sit down for 20 minutes just so we can monitor you to make sure that you don't have any adverse reactions. And after 20 minutes, you can go about your day. But again, I'm not saying that the women who got blood clots didn't report this. I am just saying that I'm stressing for the simple fact of the matter is, yes, the more information that we get, the better these vaccines can be looked into and refined. Because trust me, the vaccines eventually will be studied again a year later from now, which I still think will still be social distancing, things of that nature, because like they said, only, we probably got up to maybe 20 to 25% of Americans vaccinated so far. Until we actually get that amount well over 60 to 70%, we won't really see the effects of that. Despite what you see around downtown Nashville, which is my hometown, which right now Broadway looks like it should be normal, and everybody's going around not wearing masks. It's almost like we take one step forward, 5 steps back. But again, we'll follow that as it goes along. But yes, you will be warned about the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, about developing blood clots. So again, if you do experience any of these types of issues, please let the medical professionals know what's going on with it, because the better you announce, the quicker you announce it, the better your chances are that you'll get through it. Another thing that actually did come up in our next to last story was the wave of Asian hate, the wave of Asian American attacks, to the point to where now a bill has been passed in the Senate.
Strong stand against anti-Asian hate in our country. Passing the COVID-19 Hate Crimes Act sends a clear and unmistakable message of solidarity to the AAPI community. And this moment would not be possible without the collective efforts of so many people, including, of course, my Republican colleagues. One person in particular who just spoke before me. But I want to especially thank Majority Leader Schumer for making this bill a priority for the Senate and working closely with us to shepherd its passage.
This long overdue bill sends 2 messages. To our Asian American friends, we will not tolerate bigotry against you. And to those perpetrating anti-Asian bigotry, we will pursue you to the fullest extent of the law. We cannot allow the recent tide of bigotry, intolerance, and prejudice against Asian Americans go unchecked. A bedrock value of our multicultural society is that an attack on any one group is an attack on all of us. By passing this bill, we tell our law enforcement agency to prioritize anti-Asian violence and wield the sword to detect, deter, and prosecute hate crimes of all variety.
So I have a little quib with this, because yes, the anti-Asian hate bill, which means that Congress will now monitor speeches, Congress speech, everything else, also any crimes that involve Asian Americans will now be subject to felony penalties and crimes. Well, that's all well and great, but I can't help but sit there and say, as a black person, where's our bill? I can't help but sit there and say it, because not take away from the Asian American community. Yes, the attacks on them recently have just been horrible, but black people have kind of been dealing with this for almost 400 plus years. Where's our anti-African American bill? We still have 2 bills. We do have the George Floyd Police Reform Act, but it's still waiting to be in the Senate. We talked about the even the lynch bill. The lynch bill, which made lynching a federal crime, didn't get passed until, 2019? 2 years ago. I think 2019, 2018. It didn't get passed until 2 or 3 years ago. But again, I have to ask, where's the rhetoric for anti-American, for African Americans? Where's our bill? Where's our defense when, people want to talk bad about black people, or people want to talk crazy about black people, or insult us, or things of that nature? Where's our protection? And I'm just thinking to myself, I know for the simple fact of the matter, there has to be accountability. Granted, yes, Asian Americans were attacked, but again, black people are attacked on a daily basis. Where's our bill? I know I'm not going to expect Congress to do that, because again, you're going to have a whole bunch of Republicans vote against it. Just like you had Senator Josh Hawley vote against, the lone Republican voted against a bill that was going to target Asian American hate speech. One Republican. So imagine if one Republican voted against an anti-Asian American bill, an anti-hate bill for Asian Americans. Imagine what would happen if a Republican, or I'm sorry, not a Republican, if a representative or a senator decided to introduce a bill for protecting black Americans. I wonder how that would go. But again, it's that question of, like I said before, y'all come to us when you want our vote, but when we come to you saying that more needs to be done, I just don't need the corporate we'll get back to you moment, because that Asian American bill got passed quick as all get out. But anyway, moving right along, guys, I did want to cover this last story, which I still say is quite comical in itself, just because for all those would-be Capitol rioters. Oh God, January 6th feels like a year. January 6th feels like a year ago, doesn't it? where, of course, Trump and his supporters, failed white supremacists, tried to pull a coup d'etat on the U.S. Capitol when the Electoral College votes were being counted. That would eventually make Joe Biden and Kamala Harris the next president and VP. Well, it seems at this point that, well, prosecutors may be charging a lot more people in that riot.
Signaling they expect to charge at least 100 more people in January 6th riot on Capitol Hill. A judge has even called the deadly insurrection an act of terrorism. NBC News Justice correspondent Pete Williams joins us now. Pete, what do we actually know about these new charges, and when might we expect them?
Oh, well, these are not new charges. These are charges that will be filed. And what the government has essentially done here is move the goalpost, because just last month, in a similar court filing, the government said that it had filed 300 charges and expected to file 100 more. That would have been 400 maximum. Now they say they may charge more than 500 people. So these charges are still coming. We get 5 or 6 a day, sometimes more, sometimes less. And these are charges that have been unsealed that we know of, near about 400. And there are others that are still under seal because the people there haven't been arrested. And they range, of course, the full range from people who are charged with relatively low-level offenses of basically sort of glorified trespassing, being in a federal facility without permission, trying to disrupt the Capitol vote, all the way to more serious charges of assaulting officers, damaging government property, and then the separate charges against the Proud Boys and Oath Keepers of conspiracy to plan, direct, or encourage the siege.
And Pete, these charges, as you mentioned, are still coming, as you mentioned, ranging between trespassing and assault. But do we have a sense yet of when the trials could begin?
No, and I think it's going to be a long time before the trials actually start. I think what we'll start to see here pretty soon is a large number of guilty pleas, especially for the people at the lower level. So I think there's going to be an interest on both sides in doing that so that the prosecutors can kind of clear the decks to concentrate on the more serious charges. They got a big break just a week ago when John Schaefer, accused of being a member of the Oath Keepers, agreed to plead guilty and cooperate with investigators, which gives them a big boost.
He was a pretty cool teacher, and he wasn't like those substitute teachers that would just take attendance. I'm like, you know what, dude? Like, I'm gonna do this GoFundMe right now, and I'm like, all right, hopefully we can get a couple donations.
We want you to turn around, Mr. V.
Okay.
And I said, oh, it was something extraordinary, and I felt great. All my students coming over, they sang happy birthday to me.
Happy birthday to you.
Now, that's an impact and a half when you're a substitute teacher and you have that type of impact on your students. I apologize, guys. I was a little bit muted before that. I was getting to our Feel Good segment, so thank you for all still watching. I didn't realize I was muted, so I was like, oh, crap. Nobody heard a word I said till afterwards. But anyway, but I did want to get back. Like I said, love that part about it. And the simple fact of the matter is just of the fact that being a substitute teacher, like for all those that were substitute teachers, you guys already know. When substitute teachers show up, it's like, oh, cool. Nothing's going to get done today. It's usually a substitute teacher will put on a video, turn on the television, and say, you guys, just be quiet for the next hour. Cool. Or, you know, y'all can play cards, you can do whatever you want. I got nothing for you. Your teacher didn't give it to me. But in this case, this teacher that I just showed was really had an impact on the students, and he was living out of his car for nearly 8 years, and it took one student to get everybody together and raise money on GoFundMe to be able to present that teacher with a check for $27,000. I just thought that was pretty cool. That because even though he was a substitute teacher, nothing against substitute teaching out there, but again, the fact that these kids want to make an impact in that guy's life is pretty cool. Now, the other video I'm about to show, I did actually show on Wednesday because I am amazed at children, because children can make friends out of anywhere. I mean, I'm still amazed when I see my nieces and nephews play with other kids, and I mean, it's just like that. Immediately they start playing with each other. And these two kids didn't start playing. I mean, these two kids met for the first time in person because their relationship actually developed over social media. Or I should not say over social media, over distance learning.
First graders Julia and Luna developed a special friendship during distant learning and finally met in person for the first time for Julia's birthday.
Luna knew, but Julia did not know. So we were walking down the pathway here and she saw Luna and was so excited.
I thought it was really exciting. I'm like, oh my gosh, I get to see Luna for the first time! And I kind of liked her, the way she is.
It was really, really touching.
And after months of zero contact, Mom let the hugging slide.
Well, let's be honest. Like I said, they're just kids. I like the fact that just how excited they were. Them kids, they were so excited to see each other, and I feel the same way on cheat day whenever I get to my favorite food, junk food place. I missed you. I'm sorry, that's just me. But no, I feel that way about it, especially friends I haven't seen in a long time. I feel the exact same way, and just seeing kids like, I'm just happy to see my friend. This goes to show you that we all do long for that human contact, that human interaction in person. And the fact that they developed a friendship over distance learning and were able to see each other, shoot, I hug too. I'd be like, I missed this, I do, I can finally see you. But again, I just thought that was pretty cool. Another last story I got, guys, is basically about baseball. I know I'm not really a fan of baseball, only because baseball, for all their talk of being pure and all this stuff, I mean, you let a team cheat to win the World Series, you let another team who cheated win the World Series, but you're going to sit there and say that baseball is still a pure sport. Again, I'm going to hold that judgment off because it's supposed to be a feel-good segment. I am not trying to ruin baseball for anybody. But anyway, there are certain moments you see in baseball where, you know, just there is some human decency, and I just wanted to show it.
And then Freddie Freeman gets in on the fun in the Atlanta 8th. A two-run shot into and out of the glove of that Phillies fan whose dad is letting him have it. How can you drop that? Then
he dropped it again. Oh.
Dad's all over him. Dad says it's my fault. He's trying to get the baseball. Watch Dad shaking his head, puts the hoodie on. I don't want to be seen with this kid. He can't catch
wow.
it. Just totally distances kid.
Dad's going to make him walk home.
The Braves bullpen got the baseball.
Oh, look at that.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Gave the ball to a Freddie Freeman. That's cool.
That's awesome.
That's a dad who's raised his son right. I can tell you that. Look at that.
Now he's not going to have to walk home.
No. Ball away earns him a perfect 10. He's our fan of the game, at least as far as I'm concerned.
I agree.
That was great. Well done. And
he was coming back to thank him.
There we go. All right, so yeah, I thought that was just pretty cool. I mean, like I said before, I got my quips about baseball and when the professional league, but it's cool when you can have some humanity. If you catch a ball, you give it to somebody younger or who's a certain fan of a certain player. I can't knock that. I just think that's a beautiful thing. But with that being said, guys, that's actually going to do it for our podcast today. I do thank you everybody who watched, who liked, who shared, who subscribed. I do want to do some shameless plugging before I do get out of here. The link at the bottom that you see down there, if you copy and paste that into your browser, will take you to my link tree for all of my videos, who are on YouTube and Facebook, for all of my shows, for How the Frack We Got Here, Get Bit, and the Off Limits Podcast. So definitely like and subscribe to all of them. And also, I do want to give a shout out to Vaughn, who shared this podcast, Big VZA Dot. If you don't know who he is, ooh, voice is going. Oh man, not the voice. But anyway, Big VZA Dot on Facebook, my buddy Vaughn actually has went back to podcasting. He actually has been back in this full swing of things. Where if you go to Big VZA Dot on Facebook, you'll be able to go to his video section and see his podcast that he's done so far. His schedule really hasn't changed as much. He is still doing the VSTs, which is a news podcast. That news can be music, video games, or trailers, as he loves to show. He is still doing RAF, which is basically like America's Funniest Home Videos, if done by WorldStar, which he usually does every Tuesday or Wednesday, depending. And of course, he still has his Funkin' Around, in which he does his music production showcase. And if you're interested in the show, then you can definitely buy the beats from there. But anyway, check out Vaughn, Big VZA Dot on Facebook, and of course, Big VZA Dot on social media. I still have my travel page and Uncle Obi's Adventures and More. So if you are interested in travel, definitely let me be your travel concierge. Because I keep on saying, guys, my whole point behind Uncle Obi's Adventure Travel and More is to basically get you where you want to go at the least amount. I mean, save you money in the process. Because that's the two things you want from a vacation anyway. You want from your vacation anyway. Get to where you want to go to, saving money, let me do that for you. And I also still do have a $100 referral going on for that. So again, I've said this, one person has already made $500 off of me. So if that tells you anything, I do pay back. I do pay out individuals who send business to me. So that $100 referral is still going on, guys. So if you know someone who is needing to book travel, whether it's rental car, airfare, or hotel, or all the above, whether it's down the street, across the states, or across the pond, definitely let me know. And if they book with me, then I pay you $100. It's just that simple. And there is no limit on referrals. So if you know 5, 50, or 500 people, then it's still going to be a good payday for you regardless. I know, because there was one person that referred 5 people to me in one day, and that person got $500 to me that very same day. I am very, very, very serious. When people book with me, I make sure to pay it back forward to those that send me business. But anyway, just definitely check me out, Uncle Obi's Adventures and More on Facebook, or me, William Buchanan, on Facebook. Let me know about your travel details, and we'll go from there. My podcast schedule hasn't changed, guys. Every Wednesday, of course, is the midweek version of How the Frack We Got Here from 8:30 to 10 o'clock. On Friday nights between 8:30 to 10 is my video game and anime and comic book podcast called Get Bit, also from 8:30 to 10. On Saturdays, as you now see from 10 a.m. to noon, we do cover the weekend edition of How the Frack We Got Here. And a little bit later tonight, between 8:30 to 10 o'clock, will be the very adult Off Limits podcast, in which I have a certain subject that some people may like, some people may not like. I'm thinking of making it a Zoom jump-in show. Yes, your boy has Zoom, and I keep on saying I want to invite people on the show. So yes, I think tonight will be a Zoom jump-in show regarding this subject, because I want to hear from everybody else. But again, it's very adult-themed on that one, so better not bring your kids. So again, guys, all of my shows can be found at the link at the bottom of the screen. Definitely like, definitely share, definitely subscribe, definitely let people know about it, because the more people that know about it, the more I'll be able to do this on a constant basis. And I would love to be able to do this as my one-time job. I would love to, maybe one day, as I keep putting in the work. But beyond that, guys, the last thing I'll say is, again, COVID-19 is real. Please wear a mask. Please get the shot if you are able to, especially in your areas. It should be almost available everywhere now. But even after you get the shot, Please wear a mask. Please do social distancing. You know, don't go down to Broadway like now, where I'm pretty sure the streets are packed, and not wear a mask. It's just that simple. It's not that, I mean, trust me when I say this, we're not to that point yet. We're not to the point to where we're like New Zealand and you can go around without masks. It is very, very detriment that we be very, very careful at this point, just because we are trying to get the numbers to go down. It's just that simple. But beyond that, guys, like I said about how the frack we got here, it's all about staying informed. We are not trying to persuade you, change your minds, things of that nature. We're trying to do what the old news stations of old used to do. Present you with all the facts and allow you to make up your own mind. Because when we're informed, we do a lot better than we're uninformed. An uninformed group of people got us Trump. An informed group of people got us our first black Madam Vice President. So thank you guys and all you essential people who are still working to keep the lights on for the rest of us. I could keep going down that list, but I just want to say thank you to all those individuals. You definitely deserve more than what you're getting. Aside from that, guys, that's been the podcast for this week. For How the Frack We Got Here, hope to see you guys on Off Limits podcast a little bit later this Saturday night. But aside from that, take care of each other and we'll get through this. Peace.